Okay, and we're going to route this cable for the CPU. And what I want you to notice is that the CPU actually has two ends. And again, this is a split cable. So if you have a motherboard that has an 8-pin connector for the CPU, you can utilize this in doubled up like this to put it in. If you have a 4-pin, which is what we have right now, you just need to use one of the sides. So we're just going to fold that out of the way, and again we're going to reach up here where the CPU is connected, and we're going to drop that cable right in. And there we have it. And we'll dress this up later so that it looks a little bit more decent. So right now we just want to get everything hooked up so that we know it's working. Okay, we're almost done and almost ready to power it up. The next thing we're going to want to do now is to plug in some SATA power cables. As I mentioned, this is a modular supply. It comes bundled with a whole bunch of different cables. You notice that these are flat cables, so they are very easy to work with. And the first thing I'm going to find is my first modular cable, which is SATA, and we're going to go ahead and insert that into any one of the supply plugs here. Let me drop this so we can see it. So we're going to pop that into one of these. Any one of these. These happen to be universal except for the PCI Express, which are located over here. And that gives us power that we can now hook up 3 SATA devices onto this particular power chain. So happens to only be one drive here, so we'll go ahead and hook that up. And again, here what you want to be careful about is these are kind of oriented. They have a little notch. Make sure that notch matches the direction of the notch that's on your SATA drive. So we'll go ahead and insert that. Now the Cooler Master supplies have a very slick cable arrangement, but their SATA power cables are very tight, which is not the usual case. So be very careful when you just kind of rock it back and forth and push it in there, and that'll save you a lot of grief and aggravation from snapping the power connector off of your hard drive, which isn't a great way to start your build. So we're now basically ready to power up the hard drive. We do have one more connection to make, and we're going to take one more SATA cable and we're going to power up the DVD-ROM so that we can get some power to the DVD. So again, we're going to plug into one of the other modular connectors here in the power supply. And again, we're going to route this up to the top, and again look for the notch. The notch happens to be on this side and matches the notch that's on the drive. And we're going to carefully rock that back and forth until we lock it in place. Okay, not, other than the wire dressing, which we'll do at a later time, basically completes the preliminary hookup for our computer in terms of power. So the other cables we're going to save for future use, and obviously if you're putting in a PCI Express, you're going to need PCI connectors and so on. Right now, all we're interested in at this point is we're going to use the internal graphics. So at this point, okay, in terms of SATA cables, there's a couple of different options you can go. Obviously, your motherboard will come with some selection of them. It's not bad practice to go ahead and actually upgrade your cables to better cables, and there's a couple of options on the market. There are the OK, I don't know if you can see that OK, there's a OK OK Gear cables, which are available through Monoprice and Newegg. And you also have your Rose Wills, and there's a few other brands that you can get. I typically use the OK Gears. They're available in different sizes, different colors. Here you can see there's a red one. Let's see better this way. So again, you can select, color coordinate, do whatever you need to do. They're available in, I think, 3 or 4 different colors. Typically I use as short as possible for the best data transfer. So I'm going to use an 18-inch to go into the drive, and a 24-inch to go into some of the I'm going to use an 18-inch to go into the hard drive. So take that out of the box here. And so what I usually do first is taking a look at the SATA connectors. They're ordered on the BIOS in a sequence. They start usually with 0 and then work their way up. This happens to be starting from 0 at this end, so I'm going to actually start with that to make my BIOS, to make my hard drive the primary BIOS. I mean, the hard drive the primary drive. And then I'm going to actually temporarily just pop this cable in here. I'm going to put a nice smooth band on here and insert it into the drive. So I basically completed my hookup here for my hard drive. And just to keep things a little interesting, I'm going to use a different color for the DVD-ROM. So I'm going to go ahead and use a red cable. Get a little something a little different here. So again, we're going to pop that cable into the slot here, and we're going to drive it down to I usually put the DVD onto the last connector. And again, if you're doing, depending on whether you're building a server or a system or whatever, you can decide how you want to hook that up. I usually like to go sequential so that, you know, the first drive is the first drive and the second drive is the second drive. It doesn't inherently matter as long as the BIOS knows which of the drives you want to boot from, but in order to keep things straight, I prefer to do it that way. It just keeps it cleaner. So I always put the DVD on the last drive and the primary drive on the first SATA connector, and then, you know, sequentially, as I add more drives into the system, or if I add more drives into the system, I'm good to go. Finish up attaching the last modular cable for the fans. This isn't required, but it's not a bad idea to make sure everything's working and hooked up correctly. Now, the one thing I didn't mention is we need to hook up the cables for the motherboard that hook up to the switch, and we'll do that here in just a moment. So let me just hook this up, and we can attach these to one of the fans. So again, these are polarized, so you can, they're keyed, I mean, so you can kind of, it's hard to, you have to really force it in to make it go the right way or the wrong way. So that's hooked up the back fan, and then there's a front fan which I'll get the wires around and hook that up as well, and that's located actually back here. So for the time being, just to see if this works, I'm going to go ahead and put that together. So I'll want to clean up my wires later. Right now my main interest is to get things hooked up.